Thank you for being here with me and welcome back. My name is Catherine Daniels, and I love to empower people with spiritual healing and wellness. And the best thing about Retreat to Peace is the gift of inner peace, greater love, and joy. And during these times of changes and uncertainty in the world, nothing is permanent except our souls. And that's why we need to come together as we travel through one another's countries, creating a bridge, removing all the labels. And as we do this, coming together as one people, finding our home in one world. That's why our signature talk today is so important. And today I am so excited to welcome my guest, Sacha Walton. Hi, Sacha.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, and I'm very excited to interview you today. So thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for
And
having me.
you're so welcome. And just for my guests, just share a little bit about who you are.
I am, I'm a mother. I have a 26-year-old daughter. I have a 13-year-old fur baby, so I'm a fur baby mom too. I'm a person that just loves life. I love people. Um, been in business. I'm a business owner as well, and just like to enjoy what I do, whether it's business, whether it's being my family, just living life and enjoying it.
I love that. I think the greatest gift of being a mother is how much our children change us because we think like they're such a gift to us in so many ways and they teach us so many things that we would have never dreamed we would learn from them, and it's just incredible. And like you, I have my kids are in their 20s, and it just makes me crazy to think how fast time has gone.
Way too
and
fast.
Way too fast. And I don't like it's that whole thing when they were babies, people would say to you, oh, don't blink because it's going to go so fast, and you don't believe it at the time, but oh my gosh, it goes so fast.
And my daughter, she's getting married in May, so it's like, oh wow, 26 years. And actually she'll be 27 this year and getting married. So I survived. I look at it like, oh yes, I survived motherhood just as much as she survived with me, and just, learning a lot because I was a single mother, as well, doing everything. And just to see her blossom has been phenomenal.
I can totally relate to that. Yes, totally relate to that. And it's bittersweet because as a mother, it's like you're excited, but at the same time you want to shrink them back to when they were little.
I
So
know.
I can
Yeah.
relate to that. And even just being a single mom, I relate to that piece of it too. And the trials and tribulations that go along with that, the challenges. But I also think there's a lot of opportunity that we experience when we're single mothers.
Yeah.
What kind of opportunities did you have?
Um, for me, it was more so growth, just the opportunity to grow more. And because I always looked at it like whatever decision I make for my daughter. So it's like I had to be careful of the choices that I made, even though we're not perfect, didn't get it right all the time, but I did keep that at the forefront and to make sure that she was well taken care of, well, that she had the things that I didn't have, and, just the life, not talk about like materialistic things, but just a good life, and to make sure that everyone in it were good for her as well. And so that would be my primary opportunity, was growth for
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Well, you said something that was really key, whether you intended it or not, is having, you didn't outright say it, but you implied it. It was more like that support and
Yeah.
having that village. And
Mhm.
I have a very good friend who has been going through a very difficult divorce. It's taken years. And one of the things that she's had to learn is how to reach out for help because when we're married, we don't think about that because we have what we need with our partner and our home and all of that. But I feel like when we become a single mom, all of a sudden it's this new space where it does create a lot of uncomfortability, if that's even a word, where we have to go outside our comfort zone and say, hey, you know what? I could use a hand here because
Yeah.
I don't know how to tie a tie for a little boy, or, I don't know how to fix a car or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I know for myself that was something that I had to adjust to. And it wasn't easy because I think a lot of women think, we've got it all together. We don't need
Yeah.
help. That's how we're kind of prepped for the world.
Yeah.
So can you relate to that?
I definitely can, because even with my upbringing, it's just, I always say we come from a family of strong women, and we know how to, if we have help, we have help. But if we don't, we're very resourceful at the same time. So I think for me, it was more so like, okay, I have to keep it going, have to keep that will going, just being that person, always resilient, always determined, always making things happen. So I taught myself how to change the tire, so many different things. But I had to also learn how to digress, because like I said, I started as a single mom. I did get married. I did go through a divorce, but it wasn't her father's stepfather type thing. And so it went to that place of, oh, now I have somebody here I can rely on that can help, and I don't have to do it all by myself, only to go back into that mode again. And a lot of times we, as women, we get to that place where we don't realize how we're losing our femininity part of it, because there's some things that we do have to allow to flow and to happen. And we stay in our, not saying that we have positions, but there's a feminine and a masculine flow. So a lot of times we, don't realize that we're operating in both sides. And then so when you have the help, or you get to a place where you need to ask for help, that was like my thing. I had to learn how to back down and really just say, look, I can't do it all by myself. I have to, if somebody's gonna say, hey, I'm here to help you, I have to let go of the reins. It's okay, here, help me. And it also helps us to build trust, because a lot of that not asking for help is like, okay, can I really trust you? Like, if you show up for me, are you going to be there, or are you going to just let me down? So it's like a lot of those things. But being able to be self-aware and always self-examining yourself to say, okay, where am I at now within myself, within my heart, within my mind, and where do I need to, how do I need to go in order to grow from that? So I would say that would be my area of being able to relate and how I processed it for myself.
It's really interesting that you brought up the masculine and the feminine energies for
Mm-hmm.
women. When I was a little girl growing up with my grandparents, I always had the opportunity to see my grandmother get all dressed up, just to do basic errands. And I always, at a little, when I was a little girl, it wasn't a big deal because that's what I was used to. But when I look at that hindsight, I think, wow, like she put a skirt on. She, got herself all dolled up just to go to get the groceries.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was home doing the laundry and the day-to-day things, it wasn't like she got all dressed up or anything, but I remember her talking about how the women came together when the men were off to war, and they supported each other and they built a community together, and they took care of each other's children, and they helped each other with the gardening, or whatever it was that needed to be done. And I feel that generationally, there's been kind of that piece that has gone by the wayside. And it doesn't feel good, quite honestly, because
No.
because we, as women, it's almost like we have been forced into this masculine space just to survive. And it does feel a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does. And when you're to that point where you kind of felt both sides, then you're like, oh yeah, you know what? I don't want that masculine side anymore. I want to be that woman, to say, okay, no, I know how to digress. I can step back and don't feel any kind of way about it. But I think to your point with society these days, it almost as if it makes a woman feel like they're less than when they are having that feminine flow, and not, flowing as like the masculine energy, or like the boss woman, and all these different things that can come out of it. And but I think when you have that balance, you'll be able to turn it off and on when you need to, especially if you're like a single woman that need to still take care of things. But if you have the help, just step back, just let it happen. Even if it's just opening the door for you, just let it happen. Simple things. And I appreciate that side. And it took for me to have friends, like male friends, just very platonic, who treated me in that way, that I understood that and I learned that. And just, I know that's like in a whole different phase of it, but when you start feeling that feminine flow, whether it's you just dressing up pretty, just want to feel beautiful, and whatever that looks like for you, allowing people to open the doors for you and not just say, oh no, I have it, things like that. You start to feel that sensibility of it and just that comfort level that's in it. And then that, hey, that's just where you belong for that moment. And that same thing that I learned, I also make sure my daughter understood that. And so I can honestly say, like, the young man she's marrying is that perfect gentleman that she could just say, yes, no, you're going to open the, he opens the door for her, car door, everything, gets out the car, come around, open, so all those different things. So I'm very, very happy and blessed that, the ways that I actually adjusted my life, and she's able to experience the fruit of it in her life as well.
That is beautiful. And I think that's a testament of your growth, like you said, and how you were able to gift that to your daughter. I think a lot of times when you can take your mess and make it into a message and just like expand on that, those are the best gifts that you can give someone, really, because if you keep moving through the same way and it's continuing, then we're not really helping the next generation. So, well done, Sacha.
Thank you.
And that's probably something we probably don't hear enough. So all you single moms listening right now, well done. You're doing a great job, because it's not easy. Not easy. Yeah. So was there ever a time that you felt alone or isolated? I mean, motherhood can do that to us sometimes, but was there ever another time prior to that?
I would say, yeah, there's been plenty of times feeling that way. I have a very close-knit family, but sometimes, you could feel like you're misunderstood. And it doesn't have to be like a situation where it's like really turmoils type of thing. But sometimes just feeling like you're misunderstood and nobody understands you, that can kind of isolate you in a sense to where you just want to step back from people. I am a bit of an introvert as well. So, well, I've grown into being an ambivert, but I still have a lot of introvert ways. So that kind of pulls me back a lot as well. So anybody's out there introvert, don't feel bad. It happens. But I would say that in my toughest times, the experiences that I've had, especially during the pandemic, I really felt isolated and alone, because it didn't feel like anyone really understood what I was really going through. And so really tapping into that hardship, that I've never experienced before. Yeah, that was that moment where, yeah, I had never experienced that before in my life. So that was that alone state.
Yeah. And I think that's true for most people around the globe when we went into this space of a global pandemic, and people are being forced to do things that they wouldn't have ordinarily done, or, it just changed everything for everybody, because we had to go into a place of being uncomfortable and not having control. And for most people, I believe that there's this sense of grief that people experienced.
Yeah.
And of course, grief can translate into a multitude of things, depression, anger. There's a lot of different ways people can express grief. But for you, you said it just felt isolating for you.
Yeah, it really did. because it kind of stemmed from me having a business and being in full-time entrepreneurship at the time of the pandemic happening. So growing up in a family, everybody worked, my mom, 30 years plus in the government and all these other things. And so that was like a part of it as well, before the pandemic, like not really understanding the drive that I had to say, okay, yes, I became a full-time entrepreneur by way of a layoff, but I love this space, it's happening for me. And the whole thing was, oh yeah, I know, go find a job. So I still felt alone even in that process. But when that pandemic happened, that took me even the more, because not only were you dealing with the isolation that the world was in, because we were pretty much confined to our homes, and also it took me more deeper within myself because of the way the pandemic impacted me negatively. And so being isolated and feeling like I had no one to help me, when I know I was ready to ask for help, no one could do anything for me. And I'm always a good go-getter, just out there, just doing a lot of things. But at that moment, it was just like I was on this island all by myself. So that outward assistance that I was looking for, and then feeling like, okay, well, what was me now? Like, what am I going to do? And it just took me more into that state of, and I didn't realize it at the time, but when I look back, I was really functionally depressed. Just really, I'm still getting up out my bed, still doing things. My daughter was living home at the time, but it was so much going on that I couldn't handle hard conversations. I couldn't handle anything extra. Like if it just busted my bubble, I had to have phrase words, tell people like, oh, no, I can't handle that right now. I'm not at capacity to handle this conversation, and I had to tell even though my daughter didn't understand that, but that was my way of protecting me and protecting her, because it was nothing that she did or nothing that anyone else did, but I'm going through those trials and tribulations that was so deep that I had never experienced before. And I've experienced hardship, but nothing like that. And to feel like you don't have a way out, even though there is one, but when you're trapped within that depressive state, the only thing you're thinking of is like, okay, why is this happening to me? Why am I here? And what am I going to do next? And being a full-time entrepreneur, scaling to 6 figures before the pandemic, quickly going down to, okay, now I'm survival mode. What am I going to do? I didn't know when my next, check was going to come in. I didn't know where, all these things. And for some reason, I couldn't even still get the unemployment that everyone was getting during the pandemic. I was fortunate to find a job, but at the same time, it's just like dealing with all those emotions all at one time, and to feel like you're in a place of a desolate state within yourself is really not a good place. I've had my outlets that I had people I could talk to, but it seemed like it would only go but so far, and at the end of the day, I'm still back with me. And so, yeah, that was a deep state that I was in for myself. Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe there was something else going on? Like there was some healing that maybe needed to be done for another area of your life?
Yeah, at that time I didn't see it that way. But I look back at it now, and like, even like last year I was thinking about it, and I saw where that healing, I would put it like this: sometimes things happen to put you in a place to see what's really happening. And when you break that down, you see it for what it's worth, not so much of the issues that surrounding, but what is it in you that you have to tackle? What are the things that, maybe got you to a place like you really analyze a whole lot of things if you're very aware of what you're doing. Because I know sometimes people can be in that state and it's just like mentally they're shut down. Like I said, I'm always self-aware, even in a hard place. But I really allowed that moment of, no, I didn't allow it. I had no choice but to allow it. I'm just gonna be real and transparent. I had no choice but to allow it, but I had to really just allow that place that I was in to show me more of myself. To show me, where were my pitfalls? Where are all those other things that maybe I could have did things differently? And I know sometimes we could get in that place where we might blame ourselves. And we do the blame game. We could do it easily when it comes to that. And I did do that. But it allowed me to get it out. Sometimes you have to go through that process. You have to allow it to flow through you in order for it to, in a sense, save you. And so when you're processing it out and not really like holding on to the regrets, you're not holding on to the unforgiveness, you're not holding on to everything, you're just allowing it all to flow, then it can flow out of you to a point where you can see things clearly. It's like the song, when the rain is gone, the sun is shining, I know I said it just wrong, but y'all know what I'm talking about. But but when you think about it, a storm is only going to come but so long. It's going to happen for so long. The sun is on the other side of those clouds. And so once those clouds break, then you can see the sunshine. So that's how I felt with my life. I felt like, okay, all these clouds are here. So what do I need to do for myself to allow the sun to still shine on me? And then going through that place, I really found that, there were some things that like, I wouldn't say childhood traumas, but I also looked at like, okay, what were my attachment styles back then? I started reading like self-help books and all these other things. Like, why was I so, in a sense, like always have to have my hands on something to be so busy and all these other things. So I really looked at myself in that light. And then that's where the healing started, to where when I came out of all of that, it was like, okay, no, Sacha, you got to take these keys that you learn. You got to take these lessons with you, because that's the newness that protects you from going back to the old ways. And so, especially being in business, I don't know how many women entrepreneurs out there in the world, but, we can put our hands on everything. But like a lot of times we're super women. We are mothers. We are spouses, we are, business owners and employees, maybe at the same time. And we can continuously move in a way that we're burnt out, but we'll still show up. And I didn't realize how burnt out I was until that moment where I had no choice but to sit still. And I really liked the lightness, the weight was gone and everything. So I would say that that's where my healing came in at. That's where I saw myself in a different light. But I also found a way of getting out of my own way at the same time. There was a lot of comfort zones, and our comfort zones can limit us from being great or allowing the greatness to flow through us. So I even left that. I left the comfort zone. I left everything that could limit me. I'm just like, okay, here I am. Welcome to the new world of Sacha. And I'm just about showing up. Showing up as the highest version of myself, and I love helping people do the same thing.
I love that, because I agree. I think that the pandemic and just sitting still and just going into the dark spaces within ourselves and reevaluating and just taking the time to understand what is going on inside, because most people are so busy running away from their families, their whatever it is that they don't want to deal with. And it forced everybody to kind of sit with themselves and think about, what am I really doing? I mean, families had to learn how to be families again. They had to learn how to get along with each other again. And, you did hear stories of people disattaching relationships during this time. And if anything, I think it was a real opportunity for growth for a lot of people, because they started to recognize what was healthy and what was unhealthy for their true, authentic self.
Yeah.
And I just find that to be very beautiful in a very big way, even though it was uncomfortable. But just like anything else, when it's uncomfortable, it's growth, because just like when you have a seed in the ground and it starts to sprout up out of the ground and forms a flower, You know,
Yeah.
it's a new space, it's a new beginning, it's all new. So
Yeah.
just having the opportunity to experience that, I think, is really a blessing in disguise for most people.
It really was. Yeah. It
Yeah,
was like almost like a reset, like a
right.
big reset. Yeah.
And I think it was hard for adults with children, especially because for adults, they've never been in that space before. And then they have their children looking at them like, what's going on? And the adults don't
Yeah.
even know. So they have to kind of go with the flow and make it okay and safe for the kids, even
Yeah.
though they're not sure they're feeling safe, right? But at the same time, you have to recreate your environment to feel safe,
Absolutely.
safe with yourself, even sometimes.
That's the biggest part right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I interviewed, well, I didn't interview actually. I was speaking to a woman in Greece and during the pandemic, and she had shared with me that she had to show the government a piece of paper to leave her home. And she felt like she was in prison within her own home because she couldn't freely just come and go.
Mhm.
And it really broke my heart because the way she delivered this messaging to me really made me feel the impact and the power behind it and what that meant for her. And I think for a lot of people, they had to use this time for a space of healing, but also find different ways to create their own happiness, right?
Mhm.
Because we're responsible for our own happiness. It's not something someone does for us, right? A lot of people think, well, if I'm with this person, they'll make me happy, or if I do this, it will make me happy. And then they'll find out that that's not true. Like
Yeah.
happiness comes within yourself. So I find that a lot of people had to explore these different sides of themselves during that critical time, and they're still working through it.
Yeah.
They're still working through it. What would your advice be for someone who's listening right now that is still feeling stuck? Like, what did you do to help yourself get unstuck?
For me, it was honestly, it was a lot of prayer. Um, yeah, I really had to tap into my faith and to really, like I said, just that self-examining part of it. A lot of times people you really know who you are and what you're capable of, you know, with or without a situation happening. You already know that. But it's how we move and do we allow it to shine or blossom forth. And so I would say if anybody who's feeling stuck deep inside of who you are, understand whether that stuck pattern has to do with anything of trauma or fear or lack of belief or lack of confidence, those things that attach itself to the core of who you are. I really believe in that holistic part, mind, body, and spirit. And a lot of times how we show up has a lot to do with what's going on the inside of us. So I would say if you're feeling stuck, find the root of why you're feeling stuck. Is it because of your environment? Is it because of something you experience? Is it whatever it is? And then look at yourself in a way that says, who do you really see yourself as? Because a lot of times we look in the mirror, we can look past all the issues and see this wonderful person. But how do we allow that wonderful person to step forward? So I think that when you allow yourself to just be free and don't be afraid of the surroundings, don't be afraid of even yourself. Sometimes you got to get out of your own way because we are our biggest enemy most of the times. Well, all the time, really. But I know for me, that's how I got out of my way. I had to get out of my way in order to do something greater in my life, which I'm now doing. And had I not stepped forth in it, then I would never know what my potential, the greatest potential, or my possibilities are. So I would say that if you know you have a purpose in life, we all do, is to tap into that purpose And we all know what it is, deep inside. But we just have to get past the fear and everything else that hinders us. Just be brave enough and courageous enough to get past the fear and take the steps to go forward. And if you need help, always ask for help. Don't shy away from that. But do that inner work within yourself in order to allow yourself to come forth and to be unstuck and just see what's on the other side of it.
Fear is a big thing for people.
Yeah.
A really big thing. So how do you move past fear when it's so big and powerful?
Oh, you have to have faith. Faith is another powerful force. It's just as powerful as fear. Fear is powerful in itself. I've heard somebody say fear is inverted faith. And so you have to believe, you have to have faith, but you have to be strong enough in that to say, okay, yes, let me go ahead. Even if you have to tiptoe past fear, just do it. Whatever it is for your life, do it scared, do it afraid, but knowing that the more you keep going forward, the more your faith muscle strengthens up, the more you see yourself, the more you see these great things, you're like, oh, I did that. And you're so happy with it. And that would be the best way. For me, I was fearful of speaking in front of people. And a lot of that had to do with me being so nervous. Like, elementary school, the teacher would always call you up to read in front of the class. And I would be so nervous that I would stutter or chew up my words. And didn't have a speech impediment. I was just that nervous. And so when I felt the unction to say, okay, now I want to go out here and start sharing my story and everything with people, I have to show up and I have to speak, whether it's virtually or in person. And when I stepped past it, the thing that had me to step past it was the fact that I felt as if my purpose was greater than my fear. And I didn't want to be in a situation where I was like, that would have, could have, should have. You never want to look back and say, if I had have done this, what would have happened? So I would say to always look at what it is that you really want out of life and what you really want to do. Who do you want to be? It doesn't really have to be a certain thing. It could be just wanting to be free. Of anything that's held you back in life, just move past it. Baby step, whatever you have to do, journal it out, scream it out. Whatever it is that works for you, meditate, pray, or anything, just start to take those steps forward. Because when you do, you'll see the beautiful things on the other side of it. And the more you see that, the less you're going to see the fear. Fear is one of those things. Fear and procrastination, I always say that both of them are like beasts in itself. Those two things will always be around. It's always going to circulate around you. But the thing is, how greater are you that you allow yourself to be greater than that fear or the procrastination? Stay ahead of yourself, do the things you need to do. Like for me, I have to stay ahead of myself. Procrastination has always kept me limited. Fear has always kept me limited, but I'm like, okay, this is not who I want to be anymore. So let me continue to stay ahead of myself. If I feel like I'm digressing anyway, no, I got to get it together and keep moving. Because if I do, I feel like it would just wrap its arms around me again and make me slowful, make me complacent and things like that. So I would say for anybody who's out there like that advice, definitely look at the things that hold you back. What are your characteristics, the positive and the negative? And allow the positive to overtake those negative ways, because the fear and procrastination holds on to the negative part of you. And when it holds on to the negative part of you, it keeps that positive side from moving forward. And you want to move forward in life. You don't want to stay stuck. And you'll miss out on so much great things that are out there for you.
That's so true. And one of the things that I learned early on is fear is false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
And when I learned that, I thought, wow, that is powerful, because it allows you to look at it differently. And a lot of times what we see in front of us really is false evidence. It's not really the truth of what we're experiencing. A lot of times that's just coming from an internal space of a script that we have in our head because of a limiting belief or an experience that we had that was created to second guess ourselves. And I feel a lot of times that's easy for especially women to do, right?
Mhm.
Because it seems like there's a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like you could have a crowded room of people and two guys wearing the exact same shirt. They will high five each other and say, "Oh, that's awesome. You're wearing the same shirt as I am." And, they make it this proud moment. But then if
Yeah.
you have two women wearing the same dress, all of a sudden, wait a minute, she's upstaging me. Um,
Right.
so it's really interesting, like how your perception is, right? It's how your perception is. So I think it's important to be mindful of your perception. And one of the things that I wanted to circle back in what you were saying is getting to that space of knowing who you are.
Yeah.
So, how does somebody get to that space? How do they figure out who they are?
That takes you to really just dive deep into yourself. I know for myself, it was just tapping into my dreams. It was tapping into the things that I've envisioned for myself. And a lot of times, I would say a lot of people are like that. If you're dreaming, if you ever just envision yourself being this person, whatever it is, that it is for you, and you see yourself and you envision yourself, who's to say that's not the thing that's for you? So it's like if you see it, it could be just the thing that needs to come out of you so it could be a reality. And for you to step out of that, you don't want to be mediocre. You don't want to, not saying like there's this big level of greatness, people are like, oh, it's got to be great, great. No, your greatness is how you see yourself. It's the beauty of who you are. And so when you see that, and regardless of all the issues, anything, the limiting beliefs, anything, the experiences that would say otherwise, it's still who you are. So when you tap into that and just you really have to go deep down, like deep inside. And sometimes if you need help, like therapy or something like that, that would definitely help to unlock those things. But I would say a lot of times I would err on the side to say that people do already know. You already know. And so you have to make the choice to unlock it. Just make that choice. Make choices every day. So just make the choice to unlock it and know what that looks like for you. Step in the way where it's comfortable. Um, time is never too late, but time is always moving. So, sometimes you have to really see that for yourself. Time is not waiting for anything. For me, I have this thing where I feel like every decade of your life, because we have decades, your 20s, your 30s should be better than your 20s, and the 40s better than the 30s. Like, we don't get it right. We're human. We make mistakes all the time. We kick ourselves every time. But there is a conscious choice that we make. Either we're going to do or we're not going to do. It's a choice. We have that freedom and liberty to make those choices. But when you choose not to do, what is that holding you back from? So I said, you know what? I'm actually going to be 50 this year. And so for me to get out of my own way, and that was my biggest held back in December 2021, I was 48. So I really had that thing about it. And I was like, okay, this is my own rule. So my 50s have to be greater than my 40s. So what am I going to do? Sometimes you got to have that hard conversation with yourself. And it's okay to talk to yourself. You're not crazy or anything like that. If you answer yourself, okay, so what? But you're having a real conversation, because it's that real you having a conversation with the fake you that's still trying to show up, and that real you have to come out. And especially if you're heart centered, if you're passionate, if you know that things around you move you, if you're empathetic about a whole lot of things, like that there's a purpose there. So you have to really ask yourself those questions. Look inside yourself once again, ask yourself those questions and answer them. Journal it out. Whatever works for you. That works for me. I know everything's be different for everyone, but that definitely works for me. also just being one in nature. Like, I love going to the beach. I love sitting by the waves, just listening to the water and just putting my feet in the sand because it helps things to be clearer for me. If it's for you to take a walk in the park, whatever it is, dig deep down inside and don't let time pass you by. I've heard someone say that the most richest place on earth is the graveyard. You have gifts, you have riches, you have so many things in you that you were created to be that special person that you are, no matter who has said anything else. You are on this earth for a reason, whether you feel like you are or not, but you are. And everyone have a place in this world to do something and make some type of impact. And whatever's in your heart that you feel like is for you to do, dig deep into your heart and just start to do the things that help push you forward to a point where it's like a no-brainer for you anymore. So that's what I would, advise people to do, is just dig deep in yourself. That's where it's at. That's where it starts and that's where it all ends.
Yeah. It's really true when you're grounding with Mother Earth, whether it's at the beach and you've got your feet in the sand, listening to the waves. There's so many healing properties with grounding. And it's incredible how connected you can feel and get into your true self because you're connecting. You're connecting, with God and just reversing disease and other things that are creating trauma in the body. And it's just really beautiful. And over the weekend, I had a really beautiful experience with a young woman. She's 18 years old. And I was at a conference and she came over to me and started talking to me and was asking some questions. And one of the things that I picked up on about her was she was dressed all in black. And I asked her, "Why are you hiding?" And she says, she got really kind of emotional and she said, "Well," she said, "when I was a little girl, someone tried to kill me." And she had a scar on her neck. And I shared with her how beautiful her soul was, how beautiful her spirit is. And I told her, I said, if anything, you wear that as a badge because you're not to be silenced. You are to use your voice. You are to use your gifts. You are to be the person you were meant to be. You survived. You're a survivor. Like, there's a reason you survived. And it meant a lot to hear that for her. And the woman that she was with came over to me later and thanked me because she has been so used to hiding because she's afraid. And it was almost like I gave her permission to walk the earth, feeling like it's okay. It's okay for me to be me and own what happened, but turn it into something beautiful. Yeah. And just like my own story, I try to share that message of hope and, love and light, and knowing that we go through these experiences and they are gifts for us because we learn something from them, and then we can turn them into a message that can help someone else. And just like when you throw a stone into a pond, you have that rippling effect. You have no idea how you're impacting another person and what they'll take from that. And it's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And to your ripple effect, one of the things that, I always stands out for me is there are people waiting for you to show up, and whatever it is that's for you, that message that comes out of your mess, that testimony that comes out of the test, or whatever it is, there are other people out here that's waiting to be unlocked. And sometimes they can't get unlocked until you show up. And so even with myself getting over my own fear, I'm here now having this conversation, and, in a way that gives me the freedom to really express in this way. So it's like, okay, now I can really say that I'm impacting people all around the world just by being open and transparent about my experiences or my heart and how things flow for me into, your lives as well. So I would just, you have to give yourself permission to be free. Um, and just like how talk to the young lady, just hiding. Like a lot of times we hide behind the mask. That mask holds us back, or we're in this shell, like everything has wrapped itself around us so much that it's hard to break free. But when you start to break free from it, you just bust through. It's just like the caterpillar and the butterfly. When the caterpillar goes into the cocoon, they're going through their metamorphosis. Their body actually turns, I like to call it mesh. Their body is like, ugh, in that cocoon. It's not even a caterpillar anymore. It's just stuff. But it reforms into a beautiful butterfly. And if we could look at all of our situations in life and everything that's getting us to the points that we are and the points that we are to be, and how we just unleash and become that butterfly, then our beauty circulates the earth in so many ways in that moment. So I just really love that story that you shared about the young lady. That was really awesome.
No, thank you. She's an incredible human, and I'm excited to see her growth and what she chooses to do with her life. And I think it's just, a very impactful story, because one of the things that she shared with me is that she doesn't feel safe at home, and she doesn't feel supported, and she doesn't feel like she can be her true self. And as I was speaking with her, I was sharing with her how important it was to allow herself to be her true self. And as she's entering adulthood, some of these shackles that she has on herself, she can release those and become her true self, soul self. And she can also redesign her life as she chooses, because when you're an adult, you have the opportunity to pick people that will be a support system to you, who will love you unconditionally and lift you up and bring you into a higher realm that maybe you wouldn't have had, otherwise. And I think that's the thing. A lot of young adults don't realize that they have that power within themselves, that they can restructure their framework of who their support system is. I know for myself in my 20s, I gravitated towards certain people. And as I went into my 30s, I shook that up, because God started to weed the garden for me, thankfully, because not all of those relationships were healthy, right? So as we grow and change, I think it's important to use discernment and understand who has your heart, who has your best interest to help protect you in your journey along the way. And then who's sitting there trying to take from you, or, take something from you, where there's this imbalance. And if you're feeling that imbalance, because I think we've all been in a situation where we had a relationship where there was an imbalance, and somebody right now is listening saying, I don't know what that means. Well, what that means is that you're getting your batteries getting drained, because you're just listening to this other person go on and on and on and on about their life, but they're not giving back to support you in your life. So you would have this imbalance. And as we get older, you start to recognize these things, and you start to realize, I have to put some boundaries up. I have to give myself some space and some room so that I'm not depleted.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a tough one to learn. It is. When you're going through it. Yeah. I think the word boundary sounds very harsh, but when you start to implement that process, it does allow you the freedom to grow, because now you've given yourself the space to honor yourself and love yourself, to protect your energy where you're not feeling depleted. And that's a very loving thing that you can do for yourself. So I think that's important to mention.
Yeah. Yeah. And that self-love is everything. You have to love yourself first. And when you do, it helps you to see where the other person's heart is. Can they really hold your heart in their hands safely? Can you feel safe? And that's just with, love relationships or even friendships. Same thing, can you really trust? And because the whole thing is you want to be free to be who you are, but you have to still be guarded, but not to a point where you're rigid. You're not to a point where you just say, oh, I just don't trust people at all. You just still have to, I think what it is to say, be gentle as a dove and wise as the serpent. And, you still have to use wisdom, but still, be at a place where you can still be who you are within those boundaries so you can still blossom and grow and not really heart in your heart when it comes down to a lot of those things. You still want to have that heart flowing, pumping strong and just being the light that you are.
Yeah. I think one of the most difficult things that I've had to experience with relationships is knowing what were healthy relationships and what were unhealthy relationships, and then starting to figure out where they fit in my life and how I had those relationships. So when I was in my 20s, I was very transparent with everybody. And then I had to learn I can't be transparent with everybody. Like that was a really tough lesson. I had to figure out like what the boundaries were and what felt right, what didn't feel right. But I think that's just part of the journey and learning and growing. And for anyone listening that struggles with that, that is a normal process of life, I believe. So don't be hard on yourself by any means. Don't be hard on yourself.
Yeah. Definitely give yourself grace when it comes to that. But
Absolutely.
also learn from it, when you get out of that, when you really start to see it for what it is, learn from it. And those boundaries also helps you to stay. It's not just for the other people to stay out, but it's also for you. It's like a bumper to know, like, if you're going too far to the left or too far to the right, it's going to get you back to where you're centered again. And so boundaries are definitely good when it comes, especially love relationships with women. And yeah, we can really take on a whole lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just want to make sure that your life aligns. And what you said about when you get older, those things become more prevalent. That is so true. I never thought that I would think that way when I was younger. I was like, oh, okay, I hear you, I hear you. But as I'm getting older now, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what it really meant. So it's like I see it now, and your tolerance level, becomes a little bit more shorter with it. Not in a negative way, but it's more so like, no, I have to love myself. I have to put myself first, even though I'm loving other people. But I can't forget about who I am. I can't lose myself. And I think a lot of times that's what happens when we don't really have those good, strong, healthy boundaries, and that we can lose ourselves. And it's not easy, especially when your heart is entwined and you love a person. But you have to love yourself even more, to see it for what it is. So, yeah, been there,
I
done
agree.
that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a process.
Definitely.
Sasha, this has been so wonderful, and I just appreciate your inner wisdom, and you're so beautiful as a human, and just you have a beautiful soul, and it's just been really nice speaking with you. And I wanted to ask you one last question. So if I were to pick up your earth angel feather off the ground, what would your message to the world be?
Oh, it would be to live purposely, have purpose, and just live through it. Yeah, that would be my message to the world. Understand your purpose and just live through it.
Yeah. And that's perfect, because I think in a time like now, there's so many opportunities, and we all have a purpose to be here. So this is our time to take that opportunity and manifest it and make it beautiful. And the more we do that, the more we raise the vibration of the world and the earth, and nothing but good can come from that, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's great. Sasha, thank you so much again for being with me. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you for having me. It's been a joy and a pleasure.
And for all of my audience listening, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it. And this is Catherine Daniels with Retreat to Peace, reminding you to live your authentic life with peace. And as always, retreat to peace. And we'll see you next time.